All right. Hello and welcome to the International Coaching Week fun event hosted by ICF High Country. I am Carrie Sudi. Not only am I the moderator for today's panel discussion, I'm also the programs chair for ICF High Country. So super thrilled to see all of you here. We're really excited for today's conversation, all about unlocking success and bringing coaching into organizations. And I'm going to add a couple more people in. I do want to let you know that we are recording this, so everyone who has signed up, you will get the recording. I know that that is a question that often gets asked by many people, like, can I get the recording? Can I see it? You absolutely will. And the other thing that I wanted to let everyone know is that we will also, for those who are ICF coaches, you will earn CCEUs by being a part of today's 1-hour session. I'll send the details about that in chat closer to the end of our time. And so with that, we only have an hour and we know but it's going to go by so quickly. The question around the impact that coaching can have in organizations is something that's on the top of a lot of people's mind, especially as the research is showing that coaching not only can support leadership development, employee development, but also help the bottom line of an organization as a whole. And so I am super thrilled to kick off this panel as your moderator. I'm Carrie Sudi. I own my own coaching and consulting business. I work with organizations, supporting their leaders and as they navigate change through coaching and consulting. So I do both of that in my role. And I'd like to introduce the panel that we have here with us. I'll kick it off with Dr. Kabibi Springs.
Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Springs. I work and live out of Atlanta, Georgia. I work for Hightower. We are a contract commercial furniture company, and I have been internal coaching for about 3 years, but coaching overall for about over a decade. I'm super happy to be here with this panel, and let's get into some conversation. I'm going to kick it over to Allison.
Thanks, Kabibi. Hi, Allison Soini Norris. I'm an enterprise level HR executive, and I build adaptive talent systems, lead global org development and growth. As a certified coach myself, I've introduced coaching as a business imperative and as the backbone to leadership development at a number of companies, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation. Let me pass it over to Jen.
Hello, everyone. A big welcome. Thank you all for taking time out of your day and joining us. Dr. Jennifer Doherty, please feel free to call me Jen. I work in a coaching capacity and other capacities for the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine. I also have my own practice on the outside, which is coaching, training, and consulting. I have been able to bring coaching into the School of Medicine and also be able to coach within other organizations on the outside as an external. So have a foot in both camps, internal and external. And really, just happy to be here and looking forward to our conversation. So I'm going to kick it over to Elena.
Hola, everybody. I'm Elena Sarango Muñiz, and I am joining you from Houston, Texas, but I'm originally from Lima, Peru. I've been here in Houston for 30 plus years, so almost all my life. And I am a recovering HR leader who is now an executive coach and leadership coach. And what I do is I partner with leaders and their teams to navigate through change, through the development of their emotional intelligence. And we add a little bit of the cultural aspect to our trainings and my one-to-one coaching. I'm a certified coach as well, and I am so excited to be here, and I can't wait to answer your questions.
Thank you all. One of the things that really excites me about our panel today is the diversity of the background. So we have people that are in corporations, people that have worked in universities, in B Corps, not-for-profit, And so the questions that I often get are all about, how do you bring coaching in and what's the value of coaching within organizations? So we're really looking forward to diving into this conversation. And I'll kick it off with a couple questions myself. But then we definitely want to turn it over to all of you who are here with us. So be thinking about the questions that you have and don't hesitate to put those in chat. I'm certain we will get to a few of them. All right, so let's start with the catalyst. What business challenge or strategic opportunity first led your organization or perhaps your client to engage in coaching? And how did that define your role in delivering a solution to them? Let's start first with Allison.
Sure, thanks, Carrie. So as Elena just mentioned, if we consider the change and disruption and the impact on that work of leadership, the first time I had the opportunity to introduce coaching was with a company that had made 4 acquisitions in 3 years. And so if you think about bringing together all of those different leadership teams, our objective was to level set leadership skills and behaviors and to have a consistent foundation of leadership across the entire portfolio. And that then accelerated the progress of leadership development, skills, behaviors, which ultimately allowed us to introduce internal rotations faster than expected. And so in this way, knitting together these 4 cultures through common approaches.
That's fantastic. I love the synergies and the connection that you're talking about that are happening there. Elena, do you want to share the catalyst for you?
Absolutely. So I work with companies that are actually very proactive. They want to bring coaching into their organization as a way to show that they care about the development of their leadership team. So, it's actually very refreshing to get those kind of clients because at the beginning, it was more about remedial, and now it's more about let's be proactive and equip our leaders to really move everybody forward towards the future that we're trying to envision.
And Jen, share with us, what was the catalyst for you?
So the med school had, when I got there in 2018, was already working with a consultant and coach, Dr. Linda Goldman. So they were familiar with this concept. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, Dr. Goldman and the med school parted ways, and I was coming through my training program to become a certified coach. So I was able to step into that position and work with an organization that already had a good foundation of what coaching was. So they were happy to embrace it. And as we've grown, I've gotten to really educate and introduce it to our new faculty, staff, residents, students as they've come in. And when I think on not only that, but what really defined kind of my role in the organization as far as one of the things I'm coaching around is my very first client, who was a resident at the time, came to me and she said, I'm having issues with this attending. How do I work with this interpersonal relationship? Because I have to. So how do I do it?
So I love this. We're hearing about, a catalyst could be things around leadership development, staff development. I'm the interpersonal relationships between working with an attendee in that case, in the medical field too. Dr. Springs, what was the catalyst that you saw?
So I actually earned my ICF credential through a program with a larger furniture manufacturer that you might be familiar with, Herman Miller. And the woman who led that program, she was integrating it into our business to really activate peer coaches across this global organization who could support employees who were having some of the similar challenges that Allison, Elena, and Jen all mentioned: interpersonal relationships, career development, working through workplace challenges. And I had this opportunity after I finished my doctorate. I was approached by Natalie Hartkopf, who's the CEO of Hightower, who had a very forward-thinking vision about providing her entire workforce with a coaching support base, not only to develop the leadership talent, but to provide some kind of third-party ear for anyone in the organization who needed a coaching arm attached to them. And we are a B Corp, so we also, it's a part of our framework as a B Corp to be really forward thinking about how we think about employee development and what employees need to support themselves in this ever evolving corporate landscape.
Yeah. So something that I'm picking up here is this catalyst of, what is the need that the organization might have where coaching can come in and support. And so I'm hearing things like the leadership development, career development, working through interpersonal relationships, workplace challenges. There's so many different facets, not like one way in which coaching help. There's several different areas depending on the organization culture and the goals, the catalyst that at least leads to the question. So when we think about the critical first step of bringing an organization in, beginning a coaching journey, whatever that may look like, whether it's one-on-one coaching, group coaching, development in some way, what would you all say are the most critical first steps that an organization could think about to ensure that coaching and the coach itself, to ensure that coaching aligns with their strategic goals, the catalyst and their goals for what brought them in? Elena, let's start with you.
Sure. I would say the first step to really make sure that you're making the right decision is to coming up with a why, is to really link the coaching to the business priorities and purpose, right? Why are we investing in coaching? And communicating that information and the why to the rest of the organization, so everybody is aware that, hey, coaching is important to us, for us. And the second is the buy-in from the top leadership, right? They have to really demonstrate that coaching is a top priority. So showing it from the top is really important. I would say those first two steps are the ones that I usually recommend when a company approaches me, Carrie.
Nice. Thank you. Thanks, Elena. I like that. Knowing your why is so important. Dr. Springs, did you want to add on to that?
Sure. For me, the why was actually already inherent in the offer for the role. So I had background survey data to review when I stepped into my role. So different assessments that the organization had taken on their culture, from their leadership team. And so I did a listening tour for the first 60 days of just meeting with everyone in leadership and everyone who had a key role on their teams to understand how the experience was for employees from different points in the organization. And around the same time, we also hired our COO and president, and she came in kind of on a similar trajectory. So at a certain point, we married our observations together. And I also selected an instrument for our leadership team's journey that would measure their team effectiveness so that we had some qualitative data to marry with our quantitative data. And that just shored up very nicely. Everything that I was hearing was actually showing through in actual scores. And so our development journey and our coaching journey for the leadership team follows the pathway of where we had room for improvements. So it's very relevant towards their journey as a high-performing team and the direction of the business for the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, I love that. I love that. The listening tour, the gathering the data, because as you then are thinking about your first steps, you can always connect that back to what you're learning through things like the surveys and the responses that you're getting. Allison and Jen, do either of you want to add in to some of the first steps you've tried and seen that work? or maybe tried and didn't work?
Well, Carrie, this is a recorded line, so I'm not going to talk about my learning opportunities, but thank you. I will say to Dr. Spring's point, she was lucky enough to step into a system that was already accepting of and had lined up coaching. If you are talking with clients that are not there yet, it's key to understand how focused an organization is on its talent. If they recognize that they are a human-centered organization or work with human-designed products, then there is a natural in to start to talk about coaching as an effectiveness lever.
I love that.
I just want to add that because this is probably a room full of some coaches, that part of my critical steps also was to hire a coach for myself. So this was first role for me in this way, and I wanted to make sure that I had someone to hold me accountable and challenge my thinking so that I could step into the role in the right way, since I do wear several different hats, and that was probably one of the best decisions that I made.
I love that. The recognition of not only getting the coaching to support the organization staff, leaders, but also for yourself and the impact that that can have. That's great. Jen, anything else that you want to add about those critical first steps?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, the med school was kind of primed already due to a previous coach and consultant. Uh, but one of the things, especially as we had a bit of time where there was a lull and Dr. Goldman wasn't with the organization and I was still wrapping up and, we were game planning on how to bring this back into the organization. One of our biggest things was how do we get the word out? And so I basically went on a road show and talked to a wide variety of groups of, individuals all throughout the med school, letting them know just, hey, this is what I have to offer you. This is how this could look. We can customize it in any way you want. Please reach out to me. So that communication plan is very vital as well. And I would recommend, as an organization is thinking about, bringing on a coach or a consultant, how do we roll that out so that the rest of the organization knows this is actually happening and it's a service that is for them?
Yeah, I love that. The need for communication, I think, can sometimes get lost of, number one, not only does it drive the awareness that, hey, you have this benefit that's there for staff to use in whatever capacity the coach is brought in for, but also just the awareness and the reinforcement of this is why we think it's valuable. So being able to speak to that. Yeah. I'll ask one last question, and then I know I've seen at least one question in the chat. So be thinking about your questions for those here in the virtual audience. Put your questions in chat. I'll ask one more and then start looking in the chat for those questions. So we've talked a little bit about the catalyst, what preempted the conversation to bring coaching in. We talked about some of the critical first steps that we need to think about and how to shape what that looks like within an organization or a university. Let's talk a little bit about misconceptions and buy-in. So what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about coaching that you've encountered? And how did you overcome them to win that initial stakeholder buy-in? Jen, you were talking a little bit about and shared that you've seen some of those misconceptions. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so a couple of the misconceptions that I've come across just in the med school, because we've had a change over in leadership and personnel staff, is having to educate others about what coaching really is and what it's especially not. Um, and tied into that education is to let them know really what my purpose is as a coach in these conversations. Um, so letting them know, yeah, you may have this idea about what coaching is, and for some of them, it's very much a mentor model, or it's a consulting model, or it's even like what we think about when we think about sports coaching, and letting them know, I'm not here to tell you how to hold your bat. I'm not going to tell you how to swing. We're going to partner together, and we're going to lockstep and work on what you want to work on. I'm also, not here to provide answers. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to throw out suggestions, but I'm always going to circle back and let you know, how did that land? Question afterwards. Keep that open dialogue as coaches that we have with our clients, and that there isn't any hierarchy, which in a university, and then you add on top of it medicine, folks are very much hierarchy minded and say, nope, there's a flattening within this relationship. We are equals. And so trying to provide that type of education, and just let them know that I understand you may have these certain thoughts about what coaching is, but not quite that. And this is what it is.
I love that, just clarifying. And that also then helps to set expectations of what you can expect through that. Elena, I know when we talked before, you shared you had seen some misconceptions too. What has your experience been?
Yes, actually, my first client was a corporate client, was someone that had worked with me. So they had seen me in action as an HR leader. And so the biggest misconception I think exists there is that coaching is for underperformers, that it is a fix-it tool. And it really isn't, right? I just told you now the companies that I work with are actually using coaching as a proactive developmental tool to enhance already their leadership succession team or high performers. So a lot of companies think that they can fix, and in this particular case, client, which I was very grateful for, I had, they had a leader that was not getting along with the team, the leadership team, and they were seeing him as someone that didn't know how to communicate. So they hired me to help this leader be able to communicate with the rest of the team. And for those of you coaches here, you know that that's not something that that's not the real problem behind that request, right? So I worked with this individual, but I also worked with the HR team and the leadership team to understand that. And that's when the culture piece comes, right? That we are all humans, very complex individuals that have all these cultural dimensions as part of us that make us see and interpret the world in our own ways with our own lenses. So once they understood that that's what it was, the relationships started improving and the individual himself started becoming more confident in showing up as he was. So it is that misconception. It exists worldwide because I've seen it in companies even in Europe and in Asia.
Nice. Allison and Kabibi, anything that you want to add before I turn it over there? It looks like a lot of questions are coming in. So I just want to open it up in case you want to add on.
I think they covered it, but thank you.
Absolutely. Let's hear from the others.
Okay. All right. So Umar in the chat has said, hello from Peterborough, United Kingdom. How do you go about finding these clients and orgs who have fertile ground for change and growth? Who wants to start?
I'll be happy to share my perspective on it and how I do it. That's a great question. Thank you. So I tap into my network. All of us have experience in certain industries, in different companies, and those people in our network that know us are more prompt to giving us the opportunity to at least share with them what we can do for them. So I have tapped into that network. And as I mentioned earlier in my example, that's how my first client came through. And so I use LinkedIn as my main tool to post content that in a way attracts those kind of companies, right? The content that and my content has been transforming as I, become more experienced writing and everything. But if you match your content with what your purpose is as a coach, then you will be naturally attracting the audience that you want to work with.
Nice. I like that, Elena. Any additional thoughts from the panel?
I absolutely agree with what Elena is saying. Like sharing what your purpose is definitely draws the right kind of opportunities to you. And I mean, we can all see that there are so many different coaches out there who specialize in very niche categories. So there is room for everyone, as I say. I think if you're looking for an internal job, I think the beauty of where I landed was I knew that because of the B Corp framework and the commitments that one makes when they go through that process as a business, that they would be serious about the people aspect of their business. And so I think if you look to buckets of like industry associations where these businesses come together for that camaraderie of doing business differently, like Conscious Capitalism, the B Corp networks. I'm sure there are many others out there where the investment in people is paramount. That's a good place to start conversations.
I like that. All right, Christine asks the panel, Jen brought forth the need for communication. I found that managers within orgs have different expectations of an internal coach. Any suggestions or learnings on how to properly set up the coaching process so everyone's on the same page as to when a coach shares info with a manager or HR and when they don't? Oh, I have a lot of thoughts. Who wants to kick us off?
Well,
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Allison.
So as an internal coach, that agreement up front, both with manager and coachee, is critical. And then I find that a periodic recontextualization of the agreement, right? So as things change over time, first of all, I tend to set up limited time engagements, so there's less of a chance of dependency growing. And second, checking in with the coachee on what they are sharing with their manager, I have found to be tremendously helpful, so that the manager feels read in, and it increases that communication, and it does not very clearly fall to me.
Dr. Springs, did you want to add on to that?
I would say for me, it was probably the thing I was most concerned about was maintaining the line of ethics as a coach and the different hats that I wear as a consultant on the business or other hats that I wear. So one thing is setting up time boundaries. So I have office hours for coaching so that I can stay in the coaching seat for the day and not have to switch back and forth and confuse myself at sometimes of like, which line should I be drawing? Managers know that if they recommend someone come to the coaching table, the first conversation is with them. The remaining conversations stay between me and the coachee, and they are the ones who share back what they want this person to know. And if they feel like they're not getting the right answers, then we all three come together so that the communication is very transparent across the board. But it comes up quite a bit.
Well, and I love that you're bringing up the ethics around it, because sometimes I imagine in an internal, most of my roles, I've had a mix of internal and external coaching roles, and there's not always awareness that an ICF credentialed coach has to abide by ethics. There are ethical standards we follow, and an organization or a leader, an HR director in an organization might not be aware of that. And so there is an element of that education that you both are raising around how do we make sure that everyone understands we actually do stand in these ethics and honor those ethics through the relationships that we're having to support the individual, the team, the group, and the organization as a whole. Yeah. Elena and Jen, anything additional you want to add to that?
Jen?
Oh, Yeah, I've encountered this in the med school, where I've had one of my clients come through HR to me, and the communication from the manager was very different than the communication from the coachee. So making sure that I was across the board communicating the same message to both parties. A learning that I've had actually through my mentor coaching, is that, you know, if I had another situation like this, I probably would, with consent of both parties, get them in the room together just so all three of us are together and everyone's hearing the same message at the same time. And I'll admit, I feel I did a fairly good job on communicating the same message to the two different parties, but I would definitely love to have everyone in the same room getting the same message on the same page as we kick things off and then roll out in a more standard fashion.
And in addition to that meeting, which is very important, where everybody's together and hears the same message, I have a very clear, everything spelled out contract, right? So everybody signs it. And in addition to the contract, I have, when there's a sponsor and then the employee, I have another document that I send the employee separately, kind of explaining again the agreements that we're making coachee. So I kind of spell it out and double spell it out and underline it, because it's so important that they understand from the get-go that the conversation you're about to have with them is so confidential and so um, intimate, that it starts creating that building that trust that is needed from the moment you open the video camera.
Yeah.
And it works.
I love that, the designing the relationship and being clear and maybe even doing a little education around it. Yeah. The next question in here is one that we actually had planned to ask, but I love that Natalie asked it in the chat. What are some of the KPIs and metrics that you're using to measure progress and show value back to the organization? As we talk about, coaching brings value into organizations. How do we measure that? And what are some examples of those KPIs and metrics? I think when we were going to talk about it, we had Allison on the hook to kick us off. So if you don't mind, Allison, I'll have you kick us off here, and then we'll open it up to everyone.
Yeah, happy to. So there are a number of qualitative, quantitative metrics that we can gather, and that align both with business outcomes as well as the human capital piece. And what's appropriate really does depend on the situation. But what I found most effective in in the few that I've pulled together, one is around performance metrics, and that could be measured through leadership effectiveness, through 360s, through engagement survey responses, specific items. If individual or team KPIs or OKRs are achieved, then that speaks to the leader's ability to lead and communicate clearly. So it's all around that productivity piece, or perhaps quality or error rates. It depends on what that team is working on. We also have that reduction in turnover, right? We know that people leave bad bosses. And when we have a solid leadership team in place, the likelihood is that your turnover is reduced, right? Um, Finally, there's also this organizational impact, and this tends to be a little more anecdotal. But if you and the leadership team are able to identify greater cross-functional collaboration, speed of decision making, fewer takebacks on decisions, greater cultural alignment across functions or across companies, depending on the size of the org. Those can be powerful stories that drive the purpose of coaching. So that's a couple of examples there. What do others think?
So I'll just jump on all of those things. And some of the qualitative measurements that show things like greater collaboration, less interpersonal relationship challenges. Whenever someone comes into a coaching call session with me, I code it with whatever the topic is, so that at the end of a quarter, we can see what topics were predominant, and we can compare that to what have we been seeing in the team themselves, as far as behaviors are concerned, and does that align? But we can also see when the shifts start to happen, which lets me know that the coaching and the other development work is working, when we see a reduction in the things that we don't want to be coaching topics.
I
I'm
would
putting
add
the
in,
question. Oh, go ahead, Elena. I was just going to say I put the question in the chat too, back to everybody and the attendees to add their insights as well. But Elena, yeah, please share yours.
I would add employees can do more burpees every day. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Unless you are a wellness coach or fitness coach. No, the one thing that I've noticed with my clients is that the quality of the conversations improves. They become less transactional and more meaningful. And that's very noticeable. So I would say that's a big KPI I'm always adding to my conversations with my clients.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
anything? Okay.
not really, because everyone's done such a beautiful job. So,
All right. Well, and we'd love to hear from those in attendance. So if you're a person in an organization and you're thinking, hey, these are the KPIs and the metrics that matter most to us, share those. And if you're a coach that's working in an organization and you've seen other metrics that matter, please share those too, because it is demonstrating and having some amount of data, being data driven in that demonstration. When you talk about the impact of coaching, a lot of times it's through behaviors. That's the impact. You're seeing a behavior change, and that's not always easy to quantify. So it's always interesting to see what others are noticing in their organization. Sherry, I apologize for missing that your hand was raised. I was looking in the chat for questions, so I want to open the space for you for your question.
Thank you. It's just too long to type. Sorry. So my question is, my business partner and I are getting ready to approach companies, and we have a pitch deck, and we do incorporate return on investment and how we are going to calculate it. But my question is this: if somebody was pitching this to you at your company, what would be the 3 key things you're looking for? And this is if, you can research a company online, but you can't really know a lot unless you, like you said, survey or something like that. Just to let you know, my business partner and I have over 30 years of executive corporate experience with big companies. So that's what we're looking to, companies 100 million and up. So whatever advice you have on how we go about getting the business, I think once we get it, we're good. It's just getting the business is the hard part. I'd love any advice you could give me that I could at least bring something to their attention that would excite them enough to move forward with the presentation so that we could go through our pitch deck.
I can share what I do, Sherry, if you would like.
Okay.
So there are 2 main things I do. One is I share video testimonials. So from past clients that I feel, because it's kind of difficult to ask the question for a client to give a testimonial. But if I specifically say, this is to present a proposal to a potential client, would you be okay if I share a video of you just saying how you benefit from my coaching? And they usually do. I have a couple of them that have created a video. I share that video as part of my proposal or marketing material. And the second one is I share articles that I've written. Anything that you have, like I have a TV interview. So I share that TV interview clip, for example, if if it's related to that topic with the potential client. You know, you can see me here in action. I also recommend you maybe you do like a podcast kind of interview with a client and record it and send it to the client, to the potential prospect. I would say those three things are what works for me.
And
Oh,
I'll say
go
one
ahead,
of the
Al.
things I appreciate about Elena's answer is that the potential client has such a true picture of what she does, how she does it, so they will understand how well it aligns with their internal culture or the culture of the leadership team that she's working with.
Mhm.
Um, Through that lens, how closely can you align your value proposition, or is your value proposition aligned with the real problem they're having? Especially if you have a naysayer, um, you'll be asking them to dedicate time and effort that they will say they don't have. And so the question is, so how will this ultimately make their lives easier, save them time, all those human needs, right?
Mhm.
And I found that a powerful question when also in the L&D space, people will send their teams to training because training fixes everything, right? Coaching fixes everything. Untrue. Why coaching? Why now? Right? Those questions I found very helpful in peeling back and uncovering some of the challenges that we're really trying to address.
Can I interject something? Thank you very much for that. And in my deck, I do address that. So that just confirms that that's good. But going back to Elena, when you said about, I love your idea about the video testimonials, but I don't have any video testimonials from companies unless I got one of my past CEOs to talk about me in business. Most of mine are just, I have clients, but would that be good enough then, just to have one of my regular clients do it versus where they all work for companies, but I don't work for their company?
It's always worth experimenting, right? And trying it out and seeing the kind of reaction that you get. Using the things that you have, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. Sorry, Elaine, I jumped right in.
No, no. Hey, I love the fact that you said experimenting. In this business, as coaches, we're experimenting every day. And what's the worst that can happen? Okay, that didn't work. Let me move into the next one. So I'm all about experimenting. So Sherry, if it's experimenting by sending one testimonial from a previous CEO you work with, or it could be you experimenting by asking one of your current leaders that you're coaching to do that. Ask for permission from HR if you need to, and record that person. Because at the end, it's one individual at a time that is going to
Yeah.
benefit from this, right? So
Okay.
it's not like you're going to interview a whole company saying, Jerry, yes, hire
Right.
Sherry.
All
Yeah.
right, I am going to move us to the next question because I think, and also knowing that we have about 15 minutes left, we probably won't get to all of them, but we're going to do our best to at least get to a few more. Jen Lara asks, what interesting ways have you seen org scale coaching? Jen, I saw you come off mute.
Uh, so Phil at coaching, that's a great question.
Scale at coaching.
Yep.
Yeah.
That for me, what I've seen is just an unwillingness, I would say, to not accept that this is what coaching looks like and hold tight to those misconceptions that we talked about earlier in our discussion. And then it makes it really challenging to have that type of in-depth authentic coaching relationship. And I have worked with some of the folks within the med school where we only did a few sessions because I could just tell by the language they were using, by the short answers after being asked an open-ended question, that either they weren't ready, they didn't think this is what it was, and they just weren't going to go there with me. And that was after explaining what this is and that there's a level of vulnerability for us to be able to do deep work together that needs to be displayed. So that's what comes up for me with that.
I love that, the acknowledgement that people need to be open in order to have a productive and successful relationship. There needs to be an openness there. So I think where Jen was headed in this question was more scaling, and that's probably how I said that out loud.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
So that's all right, because it's always good to hear too, like what doesn't make something work as well as others. So when we think about scaling and taking a coaching program, from one department to another, or scale across, even teams, what are some of the kind of interesting ways, the unexpected ways that you've seen that kind of scaling happen within organizations?
Is that open to anyone?
That's open to anyone.
Um, so how I landed in this space of coaching again, because I had done it prior to getting the credential for a small startup company. What I noticed is that they started at the senior leadership level. And as someone who was working beneath that level at the time, what I noticed first was a shift in behaviors with my direct supervisors. They went from telling us what to do to asking questions that felt really good to me as someone who's being managed. I'm very autonomous in the way that I like to be managed, so hands off for the most part, but asking me questions about my process and what I would have done better instead of critiquing a project from beginning to end really let me know that something had shifted in our organization and the way that our managers, and I knew nothing about the program at that time. Later, once I had the opportunity to enroll myself, I recognized immediately the framework that was being used that I liked so much, and that those cohorts that fell in love with the coaching process, they were the biggest evangelists within the organization. They didn't have to do any more promoting, really. Is just set some coaches on fire and let them go out and attract people who need them to help them. And so that was to me the best way for it to scale organically.
I would say I would add word of mouth. If you coach one leader and they had an amazing experience, they will tell others, and so then they will tell their boss, right? And the boss will say, oh, okay, maybe we need to bring that person for this other person. And they tell another leader, and the other leader says, let me bring that person for my entire team. So the experience that your client has, and then or your employee has, is so critical to scale, because it's either a good one or not so good, and they don't bring the coach anymore into the organization.
I was working with a marketing organization, and they struggled, and I don't know if my internet may be slow, so if I'm lagging here, I apologize, but they were just struggling with their relationship with sales and finance. And so the work that we were doing around how do we become more high performing teams, it was, anchored more in the space of how do we, achieve the goals, work better together, et cetera, and work across boundaries. And they were running into a lot of difficulties with sales and finance. And so what ended up happening was, through the work with marketing, the sales and finance teams were like, ooh, similar to what you were talking about, Elena, it catches on. It had a ripple effect. And so then we scaled what coaching could look like, not just within marketing, but across sales and finance, and how we're bringing different groups together. So it gave us an organizational lens. Yeah, love that. Any other thoughts from the group?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick to actually answer the original question. So, It was kind of a combination of what's already been shared. Doing the road shows, letting people know that this was out there for them. Um, I had leaders come to me and they had already been identifying folks that this might be, beneficial for. And one of, our chairs was like, I got some people in mind that I want to have work with you, but in order for me to really speak authentically to them and help sell this, I want to do it myself. So we worked together, and then this chair was like, awesome. This was a fantastic experience. I'm going to send these people your way. And it kind of popcorned from there. Other ways that I've experienced scaling within the med school is actually kind of a more backdoor route. I've been brought in to retreats to do more training and open that up specifically with Clifton Shranks in this case, but started there and did a training with departments and then had their people really enjoy that interaction and come to me for coaching. And so it's gone a couple of different routes.
Fantastic. I love that where the more organizations have an opportunity to work with you as a coach, they begin to see the additional ways. People often think of coaching as just one-on-one, and they don't realize there's also the opportunity to bring in teams. Like you mentioned the Clifton Strengths. How can we bring a team together, use an assessment like the Clifton Strengths to help build that team's ability to move towards high performance? And we know that high performing teams really help move the needle for organizations achieving their goals. They are more innovative, who can work through, can experiment, can try different things, and actually, really produce far more interesting products or services or whatever it is that they're doing. So, yeah, I really like that, where they get to see, hey, I can have you come in and facilitate. I can have you do some training. I can have you. So coaching can begin as what we traditionally know of as one-on-one and group, but then it can expand into other areas like facilitation and teaching. Yeah, great. Great. All right. I think we probably have time for one more question. And I know our panelists are checking the chat too, so they'll periodically answer some of your questions. It looks like our next question on the list is from Eric. Hello from Los Angeles. Has anyone on the panel encountered a situation where coaching was occurring as an informal role in other parts of the organizations? And if there were any challenges to formally standardizing the role? Going from an informal coaching role to a formal coaching role, and what did that look like? I'll jump in while you all think and just share. So I was working with an organization in oil and gas down in Houston. Hi, Elena. And we had worked with bringing coaching in because the organization was going through a transformation. This was in the agile space, so very much think process and culture improvements and agility. And they wanted to have a transformational coach, somebody who was actually supporting the teams as they were growing, and they brought in internal, or they promoted people internally into a role of a coach. And so what really happened there was they were kind of champions of the change first, and then promoted into the role of coach or transformation champion, whatever that looked like. And when they made that formal, it was because of how they were showing up, the responsibilities they had in their current role. And then there was a connection to HR of how do we turn this into something more formal because we see the value and the need in the role. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, Eric, but that was my experience. Panelists, what else have you seen?
I would say in that same scenario where I was receiving my credential, the most informal part of it was that everyone was coaching across the organization to get their hours for certifying for ICF. So at that point, none of us were actually formal coaches. This was also all volunteer. So we all had day jobs and other responsibilities and other reporting structures. So we had no formal reporting structure to the talent development department. I would say where that became somewhat of a challenge was everyone who had enrolled themselves really fell in love with the process and the modality of coaching. When there were changes in that department and there was no one left there to really champion that, or new people were brought in to lead teams, they had no idea what we were talking about when we said, yeah, we donate part of our time to, coaching. So you might see some hours of my work are dedicated to this instead. And without that formal explanation of, we value this and this is why we've implemented this into the organization, it did kind of fracture the ability to operate because you didn't have buy-in from your direct supervisor, but you were very committed to the agreement that you made with the other department. So I think if you're going to do that, communication across the board so that everyone's on the same page and understands the commitment and the financial outlay that had been made there to get all of those people certified, because that was an over a year process.
I had it so the company that I work for when I got certified as a coach is because my boss, the VP of HR, was a coach herself. So she said, Elena, you will be a great coach. So I said, okay, I got certified. So then I was in charge of creating, and hopefully this helps you, Eric. So then I was put in charge of train the trainer for the rest of the HR business partners in the organization. And this is a big global organization. So I did a train the trainer. We sent a couple of them to official certification coaching. So that's how the coaching department, if you want to say, started at that company. To be honest, I don't know if it's still there or not, but it worked as I was there for the 4 years or 5 years that I was in that company.
Nice. Well, we are 3 minutes to the end of our time together. And I have 2 favors to ask of everyone. Well, first of all, so 1 thank you and 2 favors. First of all, thank you to this amazing panel. I'm so grateful that all of you, each of you, came to share the experiences that you have. I love, like I said, the different backgrounds, the different industries, the different company and organization types, to be able to share the experiences that you've had of what it's been like to bring coaching into organizations. My 2 favors to ask of everyone is, number 1, we've got a feedback survey form. It's in the chat. Please fill that out. For those of you that are ICF coaches, that also kicks off how you get your CCEUs. We also have the forms for if you're in an organization and you're thinking about bringing coaching in and you want to talk more to a coach, please fill out that form. It's a short form, and it's just our way of matching you with a coach. And then likewise, if you're a coach that's interested in working with an organization, please fill out that short form. It will ask you some of the areas that you're most, thinking about. Is it career development, leadership? What does that look like, so that we make sure that we're matching you with someone that can help answer? So connect with all of us. And if you are all willing, I would love to get a screenshot, a group picture. So I'm going to remove our spotlight and see if I can bring all the little squares into our group. This is the first time we have done a panel discussion like this. And it has been a lot of fun. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. If you are willing to be on the screen capture I get of all of us, please turn on your camera, and I'll give us a countdown so that everybody can smile and get their face all ready. Okay, I love it. All right, 3, 2, 1. Yay! Thank you. Happy International Coaching Week. Thank you all so much for being a part of our panel discussion, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.